The blood-red sunset painted the horizon as Willa Greenwood's eyes fluttered open to an unfamiliar world. Her head throbbed with pain, and the wooden ceiling above her spun like a carousel. She tried to remember how she'd gotten here wherever here was, but her mind was a blank canvas, empty of memories and filled only with confusion. "You're awake," a deep voice said from the doorway. Willa bolted upright, immediately regretting the sudden movement as pain shot through her body. Her gaze settled on a tall man leaning against the doorframe. His face was weathered by the sun, and his eyes, the color of the stormy sky, watched her with a mixture of relief and wariness. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Where am I?" A more terrifying question formed in her mind. "Who am I?" The man stepped into the small room, removing his hat. "My name is Vaughn Xavier. This is my ranch outside Valentine, Nevada territory, and you're Willa Greenwood at least. That's the name on the letter in your satchel." Willa looked down at herself, noticing the bandage around her arm and the bruises on her skin. "What happened to me?" "Stagecoach accident," Vaughn replied, placing a cup of water on the small table beside the bed. 3 days ago, horses got spooked by a rattlesnake, sent the coach over a ravine. You're the only one who survived." The words hit Willa like a physical blow. Survivors, accident, none of it conjured any memories. Her mind remained frustratingly blank. "I don't remember," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't remember anything." Vaughn's expression softened slightly. "The doctor said that might happen. Head injuries can do strange things." He hesitated, then added, "It's 1873 if that helps. You're in Nevada. The letter suggests you were heading to San Francisco." Willa closed her eyes, trying desperately to summon any fragment of memory, a face, a name, a moment from her past, but there was nothing but darkness where her life should have been. "How long until I remember?" she asked. Vaughn shrugged his broad shoulders. Doc Peterson couldn't say. "Might be days, weeks, might be never." The possibility that her memories might never return sent a wave of panic through Willa. Who was she? Where had she come from? What kind of person had she been? "Rest now," Vaughn said, heading back toward the door. "You're safe here until you figure things out." As he left, Willa noticed the calluses on his hands, the gun at his hip, and the quiet strength in his movements. This stranger, this cowboy, was now her only link to safety in a world she couldn't remember. The next morning, Willa tried to stand. Her legs were wobbly, but they supported her weight. She found a simple dress laid out on a chair, not her own, she assumed, as it was slightly too large. Still, it was clean and modest, and she was grateful for it. When she ventured out of the bedroom, she found herself in a modest but well-kept ranch house. Through the window, she could see vast expanses of land stretching toward distant mountains. "Morning," Vaughn said from behind her, making her jump. "Sorry, didn't mean to startle you." "It's all right," she replied, turning to face him. In the daylight, she could see him more clearly. He was younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps 30 or so, with dark hair that curled slightly at the ends and a strong jawline shadowed with stubble. "Hungry?" he asked, gesturing toward a pot of something that smelled surprisingly good on the stove. "Starving," Willa admitted. As they ate the simple but hearty stew, Willa studied the man across from her. "Why did you bring me here? You could have left me in town." Vaughn's expression darkened slightly. "Valentine's not the safest place for a woman alone right now, especially one who can't remember who she is or who might be looking for her." "Is someone looking for me?" Willa asked, suddenly alert. Vaughn shook his head. "Not that I know of, but that stage was hit pretty hard. Some folks in town are wondering if it was really just an accident. You think it was deliberate?" The idea sent a chill through her. "I don't know," Vaughn said honestly, "but Sheriff Thompson is looking into it. In the meantime, you're welcome to stay here. I've got the space, and my ranch hand, Miguel, and his wife, Elena, are here too. You won't be alone with me if that's your worry." Willa hadn't even considered that aspect, but she appreciated his thoughtfulness. "Thank you. I wish I could remember anything to help make sense of this." Vaughn studied her for a moment. "Maybe instead of trying to remember the past, we focus on making new memories for now. Give your mind time to heal." Something about his suggestion sparked a tiny flame of hope in Willa's chest. New memories. A new start, perhaps, until her old life found her again. "I'd like that," she said softly. Over the next few days, Willa regained her physical strength, though her memory remained stubbornly blank. Elena, Miguel's kind-hearted wife, provided Willa with more suitable clothing and helped her settle in. The couple lived in a small house nearby on the ranch, and Elena's warm presence was comforting. "You have the hands of a lady," Elena observed one morning as they kneaded bread dough together. "But strong too. Perhaps you worked, yes. A teacher maybe?" Willa looked down at her hands, trying to see what Elena saw any clue to her former life. "I wish I knew. It will come," Elena said confidently. "Or it will not, and you will make a new life. Either way, God has a plan." Willa wasn't sure about God's plan, but she was grateful for the Xavier Ranch's hospitality. She began to help with household chores, finding that her body remembered skills her mind had forgotten. She could cook, and tend to a garden, suggesting she'd been raised to run a household. Vaughn himself remained somewhat of a mystery. He was gone from dawn until dusk most days, returning tired and dusty from working the ranch. He was polite but reserved, watching Willa with those storm-gray eyes that seemed to see more than she wanted to reveal. One evening, about 2 weeks after the accident, Vaughn returned early, leading a gentle-looking Palomino mare. "Thought you might like to learn to ride," he said when he found Willa hanging laundry. "If you don't already know how, that is." Willa approached the horse cautiously. "I'm not sure if I do. Only one way to find out." Vaughn offered her his hand. "Come on, I'll teach you or remind you, as the case may be." To Willa's surprise, her body seemed to know what to do once Vaughn helped her into the saddle. She adjusted her posture naturally, taking the reins with practiced ease. "Well, look at that," Vaughn said with the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. "Seems like you've spent some time on horseback." The discovery was thrilling. A tiny piece of herself recovered. "I have, haven't I?" She laughed, the sound startling her with its joy. "It feels right." They rode together as the sun began its descent, turning the landscape golden. Vaughn pointed out landmarks and boundaries of his property, answering Willa's questions about ranching life. For the first time since waking up in his home, Willa felt something other than fear and confusion. She felt alive. "How long have you had this ranch?" she asked as they let the horses walk side by side along a creek. 8 years, Vaughn replied. "Bought it when I was 26, after working cattle drives for nearly a decade." "You built all this yourself," he nodded, a hint of pride in his expression. "It's not the biggest spread in the territory, but it's mine. No debts, no partners, just hard work. No family." Willa asked, then immediately regretted the personal question. Vaughn was quiet for a moment. "Lost my parents young, raised by my uncle until I was 16, then struck out on my own." His tone made it clear the subject wasn't open for further discussion. As they headed back toward the ranch house, the setting sun cast long shadows across the land. Willa found herself studying Vaughn's profile, noticing the way the golden light softened his features. There was a solidity to him that she found comforting in her world of uncertainty. That night, Willa dreamed fragmented, confusing images that slipped away like water when she tried to grasp them upon waking. A city street, a man's angry face, running through the dark. She woke with her heart pounding, unsure if these were memories or just dreams born from anxiety. The next morning, Vaughn announced he needed to go into Valentine for supplies. "I'd like to come," Willa said immediately. "Maybe something there will trigger a memory." Vaughn hesitated. "It's a rough town, especially on paydays." "All the more reason I might recognize something," Willa countered. "Besides, I can't hide at the ranch forever." Reluctantly, Vaughn agreed, and they set off in his wagon. As they approached Valentine, Willa's anticipation grew. The town appeared on the horizon, a collection of wooden buildings straddling the main road, with the railway station at one end and scattered homesteads visible in the distance. "It's bigger than I expected," Willa commented. "Growing fast since the silver strikes," Vaughn explained. "Not all that growth is good. Town's got a reputation now." Valentine's main street was bustling with activity. Cowboys and miners mingled with shopkeepers and townspeople. Willa observed it all intently, searching for any spark of recognition, but nothing seemed familiar. Vaughn pulled the wagon up in front of the general store. "Stay close," he advised as he helped her down. Inside the store, Willa wandered the aisles while Vaughn discussed his order with the proprietor. She ran her fingers over fabrics, picked up tins of coffee, and examined jars of preserves, hoping something might trigger a memory. "Well now, what have we here?" A female voice said behind her. Willa turned to find an elegantly dressed woman with shrewd eyes studying her. Her dress was of finer quality than any Willa had seen since waking at the ranch. "I don't believe we've been introduced," the woman continued. "I'm Martha Prescott. My husband owns the bank." "Willa Greenwood," Willa replied, offering her hand politely. Martha's eyebrows rose. "Greenwood. Any relation to the Boston Greenwoods?" The question sent a jolt through Willa. Boston, was that where she was from? "I'm afraid I don't know," she answered honestly. Martha looked confused. "You don't know your own family?" Before Willa could respond, Vaughn appeared at her side. "Mrs. Prescott," he said with a curt nod. "Mr. Xavier," Martha replied, her tone cooling. "I see you've brought a guest to town. How unusual." "Miss Greenwood is staying at my ranch while she recovers from an injury," Vaughn said, his voice neutral but his stance protective. "How charitable of you," Martha said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Miss Greenwood, if you're in need of more suitable accommodations, the Valentine Hotel is quite comfortable. A young lady of quality shouldn't have to rough it on a cattle ranch." "Thank you for your concern," Willa said, sensing tension between the two, "but I'm quite comfortable where I am." Martha's gaze lingered on Willa's face. "You look familiar, dear. Have we met before?" "I don't believe so," Willa replied, heart quickening. "I'm not from around here." "No," Martha mused, "you certainly aren't." With a final assessing look, she nodded to them both and swept out of the store. "What was that about?" Willa asked. Once Martha was gone, Vaughn's jaw tightened. "The Prescotts think they own this town. William Prescott's foreclosed on half the farms in the county." He glanced at Willa. "Did what she said about Boston mean anything to you?" Willa shook her head. "Nothing specific, but it felt like it could be right." After finishing at the general store, Vaughn suggested they visit the doctor while in town. Dr. Peterson was a gruff older man with kind eyes who examined Willa's healing head wound with practiced hands. "Memory still gone?" he asked directly. "Completely," Willa confirmed. The doctor nodded thoughtfully. "Not surprising with a trauma like yours. The mind protects itself sometimes by shutting away what it can't face." "Will it come back?" Willa asked the question that haunted her daily. "Can't say for certain," Dr. Peterson replied honestly. "Sometimes something triggers a cascade of memories. Other times they return gradually, and sometimes they never come back," Willa finished for him. "Even then, you can build a new life," the doctor said gently. "The human spirit is remarkably resilient." As they left the doctor's office, Vaughn suggested they get lunch at the hotel restaurant before heading back to the ranch. The Valentine Hotel was the grandest building in town, a 3-story structure with actual glass windows and a polished wooden bar visible through the front doors. Inside, heads turned as they entered. Willa was acutely aware that she was the subject of curious stares and whispered comments. "Word travels fast in small towns," Vaughn murmured as he guided her to a table. "They're all talking about me, aren't they?" Willa asked uncomfortably. "You're the only survivor of a stagecoach accident staying with the town recluse," Vaughn said with a wry smile. "That's more excitement than Valentine's had in months." "Is that what you are, a recluse?" Willa asked, surprised by his self-description. Vaughn shrugged. "I keep to myself." "People make up stories when you don't give them facts." Their meal was interrupted when a man in a sheriff's badge approached their table. "Xavier," he greeted, tipping his hat. "Miss Greenwood, good to see you recovering. I'm Sheriff Thompson." Willa nodded politely. "Have you discovered anything about the accident, Sheriff?" Thompson's expression grew serious. "That's partly why I wanted to speak with you. We found evidence suggesting the stagecoach was tampered with. The brake line was partially cut." The news silenced both Willa and Vaughn. "You're saying it was deliberate," Vaughn stated. Thompson nodded grimly. "Appears that way. Question is, was it aimed at the coach itself or someone on it?" Willa felt a chill run down her spine. "You think someone might have been trying to kill one of the passengers, maybe me?" "Without your memories, Miss Greenwood, it's hard to know," the sheriff said. "But I'd suggest staying alert. Whoever did this might not be happy to learn there was a survivor." After the sheriff left, the pleasant mood of their outing was gone. Vaughn insisted they return to the ranch immediately, his eyes constantly scanning for threats as they drove. "I'm putting you in danger by staying with you," Willa said as the wagon rattled along the road. Vaughn's hands tightened on the reins. "You're safer at the ranch than anywhere else." "My land, my rules. But if someone is trying to kill me, then they'll have to go through me first," Vaughn interrupted, his voice hard with determination. The simple declaration stirred something in Willa's chest. Gratitude, yes, but something more. This man who barely knew her was willing to protect her with his life. What had she done to deserve such loyalty? Back at the ranch, Vaughn insisted on teaching Willa how to shoot. He presented her with a small revolver, showing her how to load it and explaining the basics of aim and trigger control. "I don't know if I've ever fired a gun before," Willa admitted, the weight of the weapon strange in her hand. "Let's find out," Vaughn said, positioning her in front of some bottles he'd set up on the fence. To both their surprise, Willa's first shot hit its target squarely. The bottle exploded in a shower of glass. "I'd say you've handled a firearm before," Vaughn observed, eyebrows raised. Willa stared at the gun in her hand, a faint memory, more sensation than image, tickling at the edges of her mind. The feel of the weapon, the smell of gunpowder, a man's voice saying, "That's my girl." But as quickly as it came, the fragment vanished, leaving her frustrated. "I almost remembered something," she said, lowering the gun, "but it's gone now." Vaughn placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Don't force it. Sometimes the harder you try to remember, the more elusive memories become." That night, another dream woke Willa. This time, she was in a grand house with high ceilings and fine furnishings. A man's voice was shouting. She was running down a staircase, a small bag clutched in her hand. Fear, overwhelming fear, she woke gasping, the emotions from the dream still raw. Unable to return to sleep, she wrapped a shawl around her nightdress and stepped out onto the porch. The night was clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. "Couldn't sleep," Vaughn's voice came from the darkness. He was sitting in a chair at the far end of the porch, a rifle across his lap. "Bad dreams," Willa admitted, moving to sit beside him. "Were you standing guard?" "Just being cautious," he replied, but she understood he was protecting her. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the night sounds creating a peaceful backdrop to their thoughts. "Tell me about your life," Willa said eventually. "Your real life, not the short version you gave me before." Vaughn was quiet so long that Willa thought he might not answer. Then he began to speak, his voice low and measured. "My father was a trapper, my mother a schoolteacher. They had a small homestead in Colorado. When I was 12, a fever took them both within a week of each other. My uncle, my father's brother, took me in. He was a hard man, bitter about having to raise another man's child." Vaughn paused. "When I was 16, I'd had enough of his fists and his whiskey. I left one night and never looked back." "You've been on your own since you were 16, Willa asked softly. Vaughn nodded. "Joined a cattle drive heading to Kansas. Learned the trade. Worked my way up from cook's helper to drover to trail boss. Saved every penny. When this land came up for sale, I knew it was what I wanted." He gestured toward the dark shapes of the hills. "My own place. Something no one could take from me. And you've been alone all this time." A shadow crossed his face. "There was someone once, Elizabeth, daughter of a rancher I worked for in Texas. We were going to marry, build a life." His voice grew distant. "She took sick, pneumonia. Died before the wedding." "I'm sorry," Willa said, instinctively reaching out to touch his arm. Vaughn looked down at her hand on his arm, then up at her face, illuminated by the soft moonlight. "What about you? Any hunches about who you might have been?" Willa sighed. "Just fragments. Dreams that might be memories. I think I might have been running away from something or someone. There's fear in these dreams and a sense of urgency." "The letter in your satchel was addressed from Boston," Vaughn noted, "just like Mrs. Prescott suggested." "It was signed your concerned friend, Margaret. No last name. Boston," Willa repeated, trying to conjure any connection to the name. "It doesn't feel familiar, but it doesn't feel wrong either." "Whatever you're running from," Vaughn said quietly, "you're safe here for as long as you need." In that moment, with the vast sky above them and the promise of safety between them, Willa felt a connection to Vaughn that transcended her lost memories. Perhaps new memories could be as powerful as those forgotten. The days began to develop a rhythm. Each morning, Willa would help Alina with breakfast and household tasks. In the afternoons, she would often ride out with Vaughn as he checked on cattle and fences. He taught her about the ranch operations, and she proved a quick study, even helping with simple veterinary care for an injured calf. One sunny afternoon, they stopped by a clear stream to water the horses. Willa knelt to splash water on her face, then caught sight of her reflection. The woman staring back at her was still a stranger in many ways sun-kissed skin, dark blonde hair pulled back in a simple braid, green eyes that held questions she couldn't answer. "What is it?" Vaughn asked, noticing her intense study. "Sometimes I forget that I don't even know what I look like," Willa admitted. "I catch glimpses in mirrors or windows and it startles me." Vaughn knelt beside her. "Would it help to know how others see you?" Willa looked at him curiously. "What do you see?" His gaze was steady, thoughtful. "I see strength, courage, intelligence, a woman who lost everything but still faces each day with grace." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Your eyes change color with your moods, more blue when you're happy, more green when you're thoughtful. You have a small scar here," he gestured near her right eyebrow, "that you touch when you're worried. Your laugh comes easily now, but it didn't at first." Willa was touched by the careful attention he'd paid to her. "You notice a lot." "Hard not to," Vaughn said simply, standing and offering his hand to help her up. As their fingers intertwined, Willa felt a spark of awareness between them, something that had been building gradually over their weeks together. From his expression, she knew Vaughn felt it too, but he released her hand and turned away, maintaining the careful distance he always kept. That evening, Miguel rode in with news from town. A Pinkerton detective had arrived in Valentine, asking questions about the stagecoach accident and specifically about Willa. "He's showing a photograph," Miguel reported as they gathered around the kitchen table. "Asking if anyone has seen this woman." Willa's heart raced. "A photograph of me." "Did you see it?" Miguel shook his head. "No, but Mrs. Prescott is telling everyone it might be you. She's invited him to her dinner party tomorrow night." Vaughn's expression darkened. "Sounds like the Prescotts are taking a special interest in you, Willa." "But this could be good news," Willa pointed out. "If this detective knows who I am, or it could be very bad news," Vaughn countered. "Remember what the sheriff said. Someone deliberately caused that accident. What if this detective isn't here to help you?" The possibility sent a chill through Willa. "What should we do?" Vaughn thought for a moment. "We need to find out more about this Pinkerton before he finds you. I'll ride into town tomorrow, see what I can learn." "I'm coming with you," Willa insisted. "If there's a photograph, I need to see it." "It might trigger my memory." "Too risky," Vaughn argued. "If this man means you harm, then we'll face it together," Willa said firmly. "I can't hide forever, Vaughn. I need answers." After much debate, they agreed that Willa would accompany him to town, but they would be cautious. Vaughn insisted she wear her revolver concealed in a pocket of her dress. That night, Willa's dreams were more vivid than ever. She was in a grand house, arguing with an older man whose face seemed familiar yet distorted, as if viewed through rippling water. "You can't keep me prisoner forever." She heard herself shouting. "I won't marry him, no matter what financial arrangements you've made." She woke with the words still echoing in her mind. Had she been forced into an engagement? Was that what she had been running from? The next morning, as they prepared to leave for town, Willa shared her dream with Vaughn. "It might just be a dream," he cautioned, "not necessarily a memory. But it feels real," Willa insisted. "And it would explain why I might have been on that stagecoach heading west alone." Valentine was unusually busy when they arrived. News of the Pinkerton detective had apparently stirred up the whole town. Vaughn suggested they start at the sheriff's office to get information directly from Thompson. Sheriff Thompson confirmed the detective's presence. Name's Howard Reynolds. Claims to be working for a client back east who's looking for a missing woman. Showed me a photograph, pretty good likeness of you, Miss Greenwood, though your hair was styled differently. Did he say who he's working for? Vaughn asked. Thompson shook his head. Tight-lipped about that. But he did say the woman he's looking for disappeared after stealing some valuable jewelry from her family home. He's got a warrant for her arrest. The accusation hit Willa like a physical blow. "I'm a thief," she whispered. "According to Reynolds," Thompson said carefully. "But I've learned in my line of work that there's always more than one side to a story." "Where is he now?" Vaughn asked, staying at the hotel, planning to attend the Prescott's dinner party tonight. Thompson's gaze shifted to Willa. "Mrs. Prescott has been telling everyone you might be the woman in the photograph. Word is she's invited half the town to dinner to make a spectacle of the revelation." "That sounds like Martha," Vaughn said grimly. As they left the sheriff's office, Willa felt exposed, as if every pair of eyes in town was on her. "What do we do now?" she asked Vaughn. "If I'm wanted for theft, we don't know if that's true," Vaughn interrupted. "And even if it is, there might be circumstances we don't understand." "Like running away from a forced marriage," Willa suggested, thinking of her dream. Vaughn's expression softened slightly. "Exactly. Let's not jump to conclusions based on what a stranger says." They decided to go to the hotel, hoping to catch a glimpse of Reynolds and perhaps the photograph he was showing around. The hotel lobby was busy, travelers checking in and locals gathering to exchange gossip. Vaughn pointed discreetly toward a well-dressed man speaking with the desk clerk. "That's probably him. The way he carries himself screams lawman or detective." Reynolds was a tall, lean man with graying hair and a neat mustache. He had the alert eyes of someone who noticed details, and Willa instinctively ducked behind a potted plant, not ready to confront him directly. "I need to see that photograph," she whispered to Vaughn. "Wait here," Vaughn said. He approached the hotel bar, positioning himself near Reynolds, who had moved there for a drink. Willa watched as Vaughn engaged the detective in conversation, unable to hear what was being said. But noting the easy way Vaughn adopted a friendly, curious demeanor, so unlike his usual reserved manner. After several minutes, Vaughn managed to get a look at something Reynolds removed from his jacket, presumably the photograph. When Vaughn returned to Willa, his expression was troubled. "It's definitely you," he confirmed. "But you look different. Your hair is elaborately styled, and you're wearing a formal gown and jewels." "Jewels I supposedly stole?" Willa asked bitterly. "According to Reynolds, yes. He says you're Willa Greenwood of the Boston Greenwoods, one of the wealthiest families in Massachusetts. You allegedly took a diamond necklace and other pieces from your family home before disappearing 6 weeks ago. The information should have triggered something: recognition, denial, guilt, anything, but Willa felt nothing but confusion. Did he say anything about why I might have left?" Vaughn hesitated. "He said you were engaged to be married to a business associate of your father's. The theory is that you stole the jewels to finance your escape." The engaged part aligned with her dream, sending a chill down Willa's spine. "We need to talk to him directly," she decided. "I need to know more. Too risky right now," Vaughn countered. "He has a warrant, Willa. He could arrest you on the spot." "Then what do we do?" Vaughn thought for a moment. "The dinner party. If we attend, we can control the situation better than if Reynolds shows up at the ranch with the sheriff." "Attend the Prescott's dinner party. Would we even be welcome?" A grim smile crossed Vaughn's face. "William Prescott has been trying to buy my water rights for years. An invitation was delivered last week, likely hoping to pressure me in a social setting. I had planned to ignore it, but now." "We'll go," Willa decided, "but I need something more suitable to wear than this." She gestured at her simple day dress. They visited the town's small dressmaker, who had a ready-made gown that needed only minor alterations. By late afternoon, they were ready for their confrontation with the detective and whatever truths he might reveal about Willa's past. The Prescott mansion stood on a hill overlooking Valentine, its windows blazing with light as they approached in Vaughn's wagon. Willa wore the new gown, a deep blue that complemented her eyes, with her hair arranged as best Alina had been able to manage. "You look beautiful," Vaughn said quietly as he helped her down from the wagon. In his clean black suit and string tie, he cut an impressive figure himself. "Whatever happens in there," Willa said, gripping his arm, "thank you for everything you've done for me." The look Vaughn gave her was intense, filled with emotions neither of them had voiced. "Let's get your answers," he said simply. Inside, the Prescott home was opulent by frontier standards: crystal chandeliers, imported furniture, and servers circulating with trays of drinks. Martha Prescott's eyes widened with malicious delight when she spotted them. Mr. Xavier, what a surprise, and Miss Greenwood, or should I say, the mysterious stagecoach survivor. Thank you for the invitation, Mrs. Prescott, Vaughn said with forced politeness. I believe you have another guest we're interested in meeting. Martha's smile widened. Indeed, Detective Reynolds is most eager to make Miss Greenwood's acquaintance as well. She turned and beckoned to the detective, who was deep in conversation with William Prescott across the room. Reynolds approached, his expression shifting from polite interest to sharp focus as he took in Willa's appearance. Miss Greenwood, he said, nodding slightly, I've been looking for you. So I've heard, Willa replied, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. I understand you believe I'm a thief. A murmur ran through the nearby guests, who had fallen silent to eavesdrop. Martha Prescott looked positively gleeful at the drama unfolding in her parlor. I'm simply doing my job, Reynolds said carefully. I was hired to locate Willa Greenwood and return her and the items she took to Boston. Who hired you? Vaughn asked directly. Harlan Greenwood, her father, Reynolds replied. He's offering a substantial reward for her safe return. And the diamonds. Martha Prescott interjected, unable to restrain herself. Reynolds's expression remained professional. Those as well, of course. Willa felt dozens of eyes on her, judging, assuming. I need to speak with Detective Reynolds privately, she announced. My study is available, William Prescott offered, clearly disappointed that the confrontation wouldn't play out before his dinner guests. Vaughn moved to accompany Willa, but Reynolds shook his head. Just Miss Greenwood and myself, if you don't mind. I do mind, Vaughn said flatly. Where she goes, I go. Willa placed a hand on his arm. It's all right, Vaughn, I'll be fine. Reluctantly, Vaughn allowed her to follow Reynolds and William Prescott to the study, though his expression made it clear he'd be right outside the door. Once inside the wood-paneled room with the door closed against curious ears, Reynolds's demeanor changed subtly. You really don't remember anything, do you? He asked, studying her face. Nothing, Willa confirmed. The stagecoach accident took my memories. All I know is what I've been told. Reynolds sighed, seeming to come to a decision. Then perhaps you should know the full story, not just the version Harlan Greenwood paid me to investigate. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a folded newspaper clipping, handing it to Willa. It showed a society announcement of the engagement between Willa Greenwood and Jonathan Blackwell, a man 30 years her senior. Jonathan Blackwell saved your father's business from bankruptcy, Reynolds explained. In exchange, Harlan Greenwood offered his only daughter's hand in marriage, regardless of your objections. Willa stared at the clipping, at her own face smiling stiffly beside a jowly older man with cold eyes. I ran away, she whispered, fragments of memory stirring. Yes, Reynolds confirmed. And you took your mother's jewels, the ones that were supposed to be your inheritance, not your father's to bargain with. So I am a thief, Willa said sadly. Reynolds shrugged. Technically, but the more I investigated, the more I questioned whether I was on the right side of this case. Blackwell is not a good man, Miss Greenwood. His first 2 wives died under questionable circumstances. A chill ran down Willa's spine. Then why are you still trying to find me for my father? Professional obligation, Reynolds said. But now that I have found you, I have choices about what to report back. What do you mean? Reynolds considered her for a long moment. I could tell Harlan Greenwood that his daughter died in a stagecoach accident in Nevada territory. No survivors. Case closed. Hope bloomed in Willa's chest. Why would you do that for me? Because I have daughters of my own, Reynolds said simply. And I'd like to think that if they were ever in trouble, someone would help them too. He paused. But the jewels should be returned. They're valuable, but more importantly, they belong to your mother. Willa's brow furrowed. I don't know where they are. I don't remember hiding them. Your satchel was empty when they found you, according to Vaughn and the sheriff, yes, just some clothing and the letter signed by Margaret. Reynolds nodded thoughtfully. Margaret Pierce. Your mother's closest friend. She helped you escape. He sighed. The jewels may have been lost in the accident or stolen afterward. Either way, I can't force you to produce what you don't have. So what happens now? Willa asked. Now I complete my investigation, Reynolds said. Willa Greenwood died in Nevada territory, and whoever you become next, that's your business. Relief washed over Willa like a cleansing rain. Thank you, she whispered. When they emerged from the study, Vaughn was waiting, tension evident in every line of his body. Everything all right? He asked, eyes moving between Willa and Reynolds. Just fine, Reynolds said smoothly. A case of mistaken identity, it seems. My apologies for the confusion, Miss Greenwood. Martha Prescott, hovering nearby, looked crestfallen at this anticlimactic conclusion, but the photograph, she began. A remarkable resemblance, Reynolds interrupted, but not the woman I'm looking for. Now, if you'll excuse me, I should pack for my return journey. Thank you for your hospitality, Mr. and Mrs. Prescott. As the detective made his exit, William Prescott frowned in disappointment. Well, that was rather less exciting than anticipated. Shall we move to the dining room? Actually, Vaughn said, Miss Greenwood isn't feeling well. We'll be returning to the ranch. Outside in the cool night air, Willa finally felt like she could breathe again. He's going to tell my father that I died in the accident, she explained as Vaughn helped her into the wagon. He's letting me go. Why? Vaughn asked, clearly surprised. Willa explained what Reynolds had told her about her father, Blackwell, and the arranged marriage. My dreams were real, Vaughn. I was running away from a forced marriage to a dangerous man. Vaughn's expression darkened. Your father would sell you to a man like that, for financial salvation, apparently. Willa stared up at the stars, feeling strangely light despite the disturbing revelations. At least now I know who I was. Willa Greenwood of Boston, a desperate young woman who stole her own inheritance and fled across the country. And who are you now? Vaughn asked quietly. Willa turned to look at him, this man who had saved her, protected her, and helped her build a new life from nothing. I'm still figuring that out, she said. But I know I'm not going back to Boston. I'm not that person anymore. The weeks that followed brought a strange peace to Willa. Knowing the basic outline of her past, even if many details remained forgotten, lifted a weight she hadn't fully realized she was carrying. She wrote a letter to Margaret Pierce, care of Detective Reynolds, thanking her for her help and assuring her that Willa was safe and happy in her new life. Life on the ranch settled into a pleasant routine. Willa continued to learn ranching skills from Vaughn, while Alina taught her to cook regional dishes and Miguel showed her how to garden in the arid Nevada soil. She felt useful, capable, and increasingly at home. The relationship between Willa and Vaughn also evolved, warming from cautious friendship to something deeper. They often sat together on the porch after dinner, talking long into the night about books, ideas, and dreams for the future. Vaughn spoke of expanding the ranch, perhaps adding sheep as well as cattle. Willa shared her newfound love of the wide open spaces and freedom of the West. Yet despite their growing closeness, Vaughn maintained a certain reserve, as if unwilling to cross an invisible line he had drawn. Willa sensed his feelings mirrored her own, a longing, an attraction, a deep connection, but something held him back. One evening, as summer gave way to early autumn, Willa found Vaughn in the barn, repairing tack by lantern light. He looked up as she entered, his face softening in the warm glow. Alina sent me to tell you supper's ready, Willa said, but made no move to leave. Vaughn set aside his work and stood, wiping his hands on a rag. Something else on your mind? He asked perceptively. Willa took a deep breath. Why do you keep your distance from me, Vaughn? The directness of her question clearly startled him. I don't, you do, Willa interrupted gently. We spend hours together every day. We talk, we laugh, we share our thoughts, but whenever we get too close, you pull away. Vaughn's expression grew serious. It's not that simple, Willa. Then explain it to me, she challenged. Because I think I've fallen in love with you and I think you feel the same way about me. So why are we pretending otherwise? Vaughn stared at her for a long moment, conflict evident in his eyes. You don't know who you really are yet, he finally said. You remember fragments of your past, but not all of it. What if you wake up one day with all your memories intact and realize this isn't the life you want? I know enough, Willa countered. I know I was running from a life I didn't choose. I know I'm happier here than I ever was in Boston. And I know how I feel about you, Vaughn shook his head. You're from wealth and privilege, Willa. This ranch, it's a good life, but it's hard, simple, nothing like what you're used to. You think I care about that? Willa stepped closer to him. The privilege you speak of came with a cage. My father was going to marry me off to a man who might have killed his previous wives. What good was wealth if it cost me my freedom, my safety, my chance at real happiness? And if your memories come back completely, if you remember people you loved, a life you miss, then I'll have more context for the choice I'm making now, Willa said firmly, but it won't change how I feel about you or about this place. She reached out, touching his face gently. The accident may have taken my past, Vaughn, but it gave me a future with you if you want it too. Vaughn closed his eyes briefly at her touch, then opened them with new resolve. I do want it, he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. I've wanted it since the day you rode beside me and laughed under the open sky like you belonged there. He pulled her into his arms then, his kiss conveying everything words had failed to express: longing, tenderness, and the promise of a shared tomorrow. Willa responded with equal fervor, the last barriers between them finally falling away. When they eventually made their way back to the house, hand in hand, Alina took one look at their faces and smiled knowingly. About time, she murmured, serving them supper with a satisfied expression. That night, lying in her bed, Willa felt truly at peace for the first time since waking in this same room months ago. Her past would always be partially obscured, a book with missing pages, but her future had never been clearer. The next morning, Vaughn proposed properly, offering Willa a simple silver ring that had belonged to his mother. It's not fancy, he apologized, not like the jewels you had in Boston. It's perfect, Willa assured him, slipping it onto her finger. Those diamonds were pretty, but they represented a life I was desperate to escape. This represents a life I'm choosing freely. They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in Valentine. Alina had helped Willa sew a wedding dress from fine cream-colored fabric ordered from San Francisco. Sheriff Thompson gave the bride away, and to everyone's surprise, Dr. Peterson revealed a talent for playing the fiddle at the celebration afterward. Martha Prescott made a point of attending, though her congratulations seemed driven more by curiosity than genuine goodwill. How remarkable, she commented, that a Boston socialite should find happiness with a Nevada rancher, like something from a dime novel. Life is full of surprises, Mrs. Prescott, Willa replied with a serene smile. The Prescott's presence served as a reminder that not all obstacles were behind them. William Prescott cornered Vaughn during the festivities, renewing his offer to buy the ranch's water rights. Not interested, Prescott, Vaughn said firmly. Not now, not ever. Be reasonable, Xavier, Prescott pressed. That silver mine needs water and your stream is the closest source. Name your price. It's not about money, Vaughn replied. That water supports my land, my cattle, and now my family. Find another solution for your mine. Prescott's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. A man in my position has ways of getting what he wants. Is that a threat? Vaughn asked quietly. A friendly warning, Prescott said with a thin smile. Congratulations on your marriage. He tipped his hat and rejoined the celebration, leaving Vaughn troubled. Later, when Vaughn shared the exchange with Willa, she frowned in concern. Do you think he'll cause trouble? Almost certainly, Vaughn admitted. Prescott isn't used to being denied. But don't worry, this ranch has weathered worse threats than him. Their first months of marriage were a time of joy and adjustment. They worked side by side during the days, learning the rhythms of married life. Evenings were spent planning improvements to the ranch house, now that it was truly a family home. Vaughn built new furniture, and Willa planted a garden that would bloom in the spring. Winter arrived with unusual force that year, bringing heavy snow and bitter cold. The ranch was well prepared with stored food, firewood, and feed for the livestock, but the harsh conditions limited travel and communication with town. It was during this isolated time that Willa discovered she was expecting a child. The news brought both joy and anxiety. Joy at the new life they had created, anxiety about giving birth so far from proper medical care. We'll make it work, Vaughn promised, his hand gently caressing her still flat stomach. When spring comes, we can ride to town regularly for Dr. Peterson to check on you. And if the baby comes early, Willa asked, then Alina will help, Vaughn said confidently. She's delivered half a dozen babies for families in the area. The winter months passed slowly. Willa's body changed, her pregnancy becoming more visible as the new year began. The isolation of the season gave them time to prepare, to dream, to plan for their child's future. When the first signs of spring finally appeared, crocuses pushing through melting snow, longer daylight hours, warmer breezes, it felt like a promise fulfilled. The ranch had survived the harsh winter, and new life was everywhere: newborn calves, budding trees, and Willa's growing belly. Their first trip into Valentine after the winter isolation brought troubling news. William Prescott had been busy during the long months, filing legal challenges to Vaughn's water rights and spreading rumors about the legitimacy of his land claims. "It's all nonsense," Sheriff Thompson assured them. "Your deed is solid, Vaughn." "But Prescott has money for lawyers and patience for a long fight." "We don't," Vaughn said grimly. "Fighting this in court would drain our savings, which we need now more than ever." He glanced at Willa's pregnant form. "There's something else," Thompson added reluctantly. "Prescott's been asking questions about Willa, about her past in Boston. I think he's trying to dig up information he can use against you both." The news sent a chill through Willa. "Detective Reynolds told everyone I wasn't the woman he was looking for." "Prescott doesn't believe it," Thompson said. "He sent telegrams east, seems determined to uncover your secrets." On the ride back to the ranch, Vaughn and Willa discussed their options. "Maybe I should go to Prescott," Willa suggested. "Tell him the truth and ask him to leave us alone." "He'd use it against you," Vaughn said firmly. "He'd threaten to expose your past if we don't sell him the water rights." "Then what do we do?" Vaughn's jaw set in determination. "We fight, on our terms, not his." Their strategy was multifaceted. First, they sought legal advice from a lawyer in the larger town of Elko, who confirmed that Vaughn's water rights were secure under Nevada territorial law. Second, they began building alliances with other small ranchers in the area who also faced pressure from Prescott's expanding mining operations. Third, they prepared for the possibility that Prescott might succeed in uncovering Willa's past. "If it comes to it," Willa told Vaughn, "I'll face whatever consequences there are for taking the jewels. I won't let him use my past to control our future." As summer approached, bringing Willa's due date closer, tensions with Prescott escalated. One of Vaughn's best grazing pastures was mysteriously burned, forcing him to move cattle to less fertile land. A dam appeared on a tributary upstream from their property, reducing their water flow, though there was no proof Prescott was behind it. Anonymous letters arrived, containing veiled threats and references to Boston. Through it all, Vaughn and Willa drew strength from each other and from the community that increasingly rallied around them. Other ranchers who had initially been wary of Willa now defended her fiercely against town gossip. Elena and Miguel proved their loyalty daily with tireless work and unwavering support. It was Elena who first spotted the riders approaching one hot July afternoon. "3 men," she reported to Vaughn, who was repairing a fence nearby. "One looks like Prescott." Vaughn immediately sent Miguel to guard the house, where Willa was resting, her pregnancy now in its final weeks. He himself went to meet the approaching party, rifle in hand, but pointed at the ground, a warning, not a threat. "Prescott," he greeted coolly as the riders pulled up. "You're trespassing." William Prescott's usual polished appearance was marred by trail dust and sweat. The 2 men with him were obviously hired guns, their expressions hard and hands hovering near their holsters. "Just a neighborly visit, Xavier," Prescott said with a false smile. "I brought some interesting news from back east. Thought your wife might want to hear it firsthand." "Whatever you have to say, you can say to me," Vaughn replied, his stance unyielding. Prescott's smile widened unpleasantly. "Very well." It seems Harlan Greenwood didn't believe the story about his daughter's death after all. He's offering a substantial reward for information about her whereabouts, and for the return of certain valuable items she took with her. Vaughn's expression remained neutral, though his grip on the rifle tightened. "That has nothing to do with my wife." "Come now, Xavier," Prescott said with exaggerated patience. "We both know better. I have witnesses who recognize her from the photograph Reynolds was showing around." I have confirmation from Boston about the time frame of her disappearance, and I have a very interesting telegram from Jonathan Blackwell, who is most eager to claim his runaway bride. What do you want, Prescott? Vaughn asked bluntly, though he already knew the answer. The same thing I've always wanted. Your water rights. Sign them over to me, and I'll forget everything I know about your wife's true identity. Before Vaughn could respond, Willa's voice came from behind him. That won't be necessary, Mr. Prescott. Vaughn turned to see Willa standing there, one hand supporting her rounded belly, the other holding a familiar small revolver at her side. Despite her condition, she stood tall and unafraid. Mrs. Xavier, Prescott said, his eyes moving to the gun. Or should I say, Miss Greenwood? I see your condition hasn't dampened your spirit. My name is Willa Xavier, she said firmly, moving to stand beside Vaughn. And you're not welcome on our land. I'm offering you a simple transaction, Prescott said. Your secrets stay buried and I get the water I need for my mine. Everyone wins. Everyone except the other ranchers who depend on that same water, Willa pointed out. Everyone except the people who would lose their livelihoods when you drain the stream dry for your silver mine. Prescott's false pleasantness faded. Don't be foolish. Your husband can't protect you from the law. Theft is a serious crime and fleeing justice makes it worse. I took what was rightfully mine, Willa said evenly. My mother's jewels, left to me in her will. My father had no right to use them as bargaining chips in his business dealings. That's not how the law will see it, Prescott warned. And your fiancé is quite determined to find you. Blackwell is not my fiancé, Willa replied, her voice hard. He's a man who bought a woman like a piece of property. I made my choice, Mr. Prescott. I chose freedom and I chose Vaughn. Nothing you threaten us with will change that. The standoff stretched taut between them until one of Prescott's men shifted uneasily in his saddle. Mr. Prescott, we got company. All eyes turned to see a group of riders approaching from the direction of Town Sheriff Thompson in the lead, followed by 5 or 6 ranchers from neighboring properties. Seems word travels fast, Vaughn commented mildly, Prescott's face flushed with anger. This isn't over, Xavier. Yes, it is, Sheriff Thompson said as he rode up. William Prescott, I'm placing you under arrest. On what charge? Prescott demanded indignantly. Attempted bribery of a territorial official, for starters, Thompson replied. Seems your mine foreman got cold feet about your methods. Came to me with quite a tale about how you've been trying to manipulate water rights all over the county, including offering me a bonus to look the other way on certain legal matters. As Thompson recited the list of charges, including evidence of the sabotage on Vaughn's ranch, Prescott's bluster deflated. His hired men, sensing which way the wind was blowing, made no move to interfere when Thompson and another rancher dismounted to take Prescott into custody. You can't do this, Prescott protested as he was helped none too gently from his horse. I'm the most important man in Valentine. Not anymore, Thompson said grimly, securing Prescott's wrists with handcuffs. The territorial governor is particularly interested in your case. Seems he doesn't appreciate wealthy men manipulating land and water rights for personal gain. As Prescott was led away, still protesting his innocence, Sheriff Thompson approached Vaughn and Willa. You two all right? We're fine, Vaughn assured him, his arm protectively around Willa's shoulders. Though I admit your timing couldn't have been better, Thompson nodded. Got word Prescott was headed this way with trouble in mind. These fellows, he gestured to the other ranchers, volunteered to ride along. Seems you've made some friends, Xavier. I'm grateful, Vaughn said sincerely, exchanging nods with the men who had come to their aid. What about the information Prescott has about me? Willa asked worriedly. He said my father is still looking for me. Thompson's expression grew serious. That part's true. Got a telegram from Boston law enforcement last week asking about a Willa Greenwood. Seems the story of your death didn't take. What did you tell them? Vaughn asked. Nothing yet, Thompson replied, but I'll have to respond eventually. Law enforcement cooperation and all that. Willa's hand moved protectively over her belly. I can't go back, Sheriff, I won't. Thompson studied her for a long moment. The way I see it, Willa Greenwood did die in that stagecoach accident. The woman standing before me is Willa Xavier, a respectable married woman about to have a child. That's what my official response will say. Relief washed over Willa. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet, Thompson cautioned. Prescott's legal troubles will keep him occupied for a while, but he knows your secret, and there's still the matter of those missing jewels. I don't have them, Willa admitted. I don't know what happened to them after the accident. Thompson nodded thoughtfully. Well, that's a problem for another day. Right now, you should get back inside. This excitement can't be good for your condition. Vaughn agreed, guiding Willa back toward the house. The ranchers who had come to their aid called out good wishes and promises to check on them in the coming days, then turned to follow the sheriff and his prisoner back toward Valentine. That night, as they lay in bed discussing the day's events, Willa suddenly gasped and pressed a hand to her side. What is it? Vaughn asked, immediately alert. The baby, Willa said, wincing. I think it's time. The next 12 hours were a blur of pain, fear, and ultimately joy. Elena proved her worth 100 times over, calmly directing Vaughn and Miguel in their tasks while guiding Willa through the birthing process. Just as dawn broke over the Nevada hills, a healthy baby boy entered the world, his lusty cries filling the small bedroom. He's perfect, Vaughn whispered, tears in his eyes as he held his son for the first time. Perfect, just like his mother. They named him Samuel after Vaughn's father. As Willa recovered from the birth and adjusted to motherhood, news arrived from town that William Prescott had been transported to Carson City to face charges. His wife had returned to her family in Philadelphia, and the bank was now under new management. The immediate threat to their water rights and Willa's secret appeared to be over, but Willa knew that secrets had a way of resurfacing. The jewels remained missing, and somewhere back in Boston, her father and Jonathan Blackwell were still looking for her. These concerns faded into the background, however, as she focused on her new family and the life she was building with Vaughn. Samuel grew into a robust, curious infant, the center of his parents' world. The ranch prospered under Vaughn's careful management, with Willa taking on more responsibilities as she regained her strength. They hired additional hands and expanded their herd, their hard work bearing fruit in increased profits and respect in the community. It was Miguel who made the discovery, nearly a year after Samuel's birth. While clearing brush along the ravine where the stagecoach had crashed, he found a small leather pouch wedged between rocks, its contents still intact despite months of exposure to the elements. Dios mío, he breathed as he opened it, revealing sparkling diamonds and other jewels that caught the sunlight in dazzling patterns. He immediately took his find to Vaughn and Willa. My mother's necklace, Willa said softly, touching the largest piece, a diamond pendant on a delicate chain. And her rings, her earrings. The jewels triggered fragments of memory, a smiling woman with Willa's eyes placing the necklace around a younger Willa's neck. She wanted me to have these, to remember her by. What should we do with them? Vaughn asked, aware of the complicated legal and moral implications of the jewels' recovery. Willa considered for a moment, then reached a decision. We return them, she said firmly, not to my father or to Blackwell, but to the one person who tried to help me, Margaret Pierce. She'll know what to do with them. With Sheriff Thompson's help, they arranged for a trusted Pinkerton agent, not Reynolds, who had left the agency to transport the jewels back to Boston, along with a letter from Willa to Margaret explaining everything. The letter included no details about Willa's current whereabouts, only assurances that she was safe, happy, and had found the freedom and love she had sought. Months later, a response arrived via Sheriff Thompson. Margaret had received the jewels and Willa's letter. She had used her considerable social influence to resolve the matter quietly. The jewels were formally recognized as Willa's inheritance from her mother, and Margaret, as executor of the will, had sold most of them. The resulting funds were being held in trust, to be claimed by Willa should she ever choose to do so. Most importantly, Margaret reported that Harlan Greenwood had finally accepted that his daughter had made her choice and would not be returning. Blackwell, faced with mounting business troubles and the scandal of a second runaway bride, apparently Willa wasn't the first to flee his matrimonial plans, had abandoned his search and turned his attention to a wealthy widow in New York. It's over, Willa said in wonder as she finished reading the letter. Really over. Does that mean you want to go back? Vaughn asked, the old insecurity briefly visible in his eyes. Now that it's safe, Willa smiled, reaching out to touch his face gently. This is my home, Vaughn. You and Samuel are my family. Nothing in Boston could ever compare to what I have here. He pulled her into his arms, relief evident in his embrace. I was afraid that once the danger passed, once you had a choice again. I made my choice the day I married you, Willa said softly. Everything since then has only confirmed that it was the right one. The years that followed brought both challenges and blessings. The ranch continued to prosper, allowing them to build a larger house as their family grew. A daughter, Elizabeth, joined them 2 years after Samuel, followed by twins, a boy and a girl 3 years later. Each child was a joy, a new thread in the tapering of their shared life. Willa's memories returned, gradually triggered by a scent, a sound, a glimpse of something familiar. She remembered more of her childhood, her mother's love, her education. But these memories no longer caused pain or confusion. They were simply part of the person she had been, stepping stones to the woman she had become. Valentine grew as well, evolving from a rough frontier town into a more established community. The silver mine eventually closed when the vein ran out, but by then, other industries had developed. William Prescott never returned after serving his sentence, his ambitious schemes forgotten as the town found more sustainable paths to prosperity. On the 10th anniversary of her arrival at Vaughn's ranch, Willa stood on the porch watching the sunset paint the hills in gold and crimson. Behind her, she could hear the sounds of her family, Vaughn helping Samuel with a school assignment, Elizabeth playing with the twins, Elena scolding Miguel for tracking mud across her clean floor. These were the memories that mattered, Willa thought. Not the ones she had lost, but the ones she had created here in this place with these people who had become her world. Vaughn joined her on the porch, slipping an arm around her waist. Penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Xavier. Willa smiled up at him, the love between them as strong and sure as the land beneath their feet. I was just thinking about memories, the ones I lost and the ones we've made. Any regrets? He asked, his eyes searching hers. Not one, Willa answered truthfully. The accident that took my memory gave me something far more valuable. It gave me you, this ranch, our children. It gave me a life I chose, not one chosen for me. Vaughn pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead. I thanked my lucky stars the day you opened your eyes in my guest room, even if I was too stubborn to admit it right away. We've come a long way from that day, Willa mused. And we've got a long way still to go, Vaughn replied, his gaze taking in their flourishing ranch, their growing children, the life they had built together from nothing but hope and hard work. As the last rays of sunset faded into twilight, Willa leaned into her husband's embrace, content in the knowledge that whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they would face them together, not as the people they had once been, but as the family they had become. The accident that had taken her memories had given her the greatest gift of all, the chance to create new ones, ones worth keeping, with the man who had helped her discover not who she had been, but who she was meant to be.